Hey guys, how's it going? This is Watch, and in this video I'm going to be doing a direct head-to-head comparison between the new Alienware Alpha that just came out from Dell and Alienware compared to a custom configuration gaming console PC that I just made based on the exact same price range. So if you're interested in how the Alienware Alpha compares against a PC that you build yourself with equivalent pricing, you're definitely going to be interested in this video. So let's get right into it. Now, before I mention the parts list of our custom built PC, I do have to mention that the Alienware Alpha is a very compact PC that you can never really replicate the size because Dell has completely engineered that architecture to be completely customized. So it has a custom PCB that actually has a mobile graphics card stuck together with a desktop CPU. And there are some elements that you can upgrade, such as RAM, CPU, and hard drive, but the GPU is unupgradable. So in terms of that, I do want to see how our custom built PC fares against the Alpha. Now, additionally, the Alienware Alpha has some clever UI elements that makes it a little bit more couch friendly straight out of the box, but I'm sure you can customize your own gaming PC, whether you're going to put Steam OS on it or just run Steam in big picture mode. Now, the philosophy for our build, like any budget gaming PC, is we're going to put our money where it counts, and that's going to be the graphics card. So we're not going to spend too much on really anything else. And starting with our CPU, we're using the AMD Athlon 5350. This is an APU that's clocked at about 2.05 gigahertz. This is actually a quad-core CPU, so it's definitely going to be useful for certain games that actually take advantage of those extra cores. Now, in terms of the motherboard, we're using an ASRock i-ATX motherboard, which is the AM1B-M. This is a pretty economical motherboard that you can get. It is a very compact size, everything we need: two slots for memory, one big 16X PCI slot for your full graphics card, and we can fit our graphics card in it. So this is really a housing for our equipment, so we can't really spend too much money over here, but this will be adequate. Now, in terms of RAM, we're just going with 4 gigs of a Ballistics DDR3, clocking about 1600 megahertz, and again, you can upgrade later on, but for most gaming stuff, 4 gigs will definitely work. Next, the Alienware Alpha has AC Wi-Fi, so we need to buy an AC mini adapter, which is only $16.99 on Amazon. Now, in terms of case, there's actually a lot of options that you can go over here, and you can definitely save a lot of money if you kind of get a more simpler case and perhaps a case that has a built-in power supply, although it's always worth spending your money on a good, decent power supply for longevity's sake and for power savings and things like that. If you want to get a sleek console-like gaming experience, I would definitely recommend the Silverstone Tech Mini ITX DX computer case, and this is a nice console-esque case. You do want a specialized power supply with it. They recommend a Mini ITX form factor, and this is a great power supply. It's 80 plus bronze, so very good in terms of efficiency, and we have 450 watts, which should be plenty for everything. After that, in terms of hard drive, we're just using a simple Western Digital Caviar Blue 500 gig 2.5 inch hard drive. You can of course get SSDs or a larger capacity if you need, but this is going to work for our purpose. Now, at this point, if we add up everything I talked about, we get around $320 without our GPU. Now, in terms of GPU, you can go the AMD route or the NVIDIA route, and it's completely up to you. Specifically, if you were to get something that is dollar for dollar great in terms of overall value, in terms of the AMD side, you can't really beat the R9 280X. It has such great performance. It's generally a tiny bit more expensive than the NVIDIA graphics card that I picked, but it's definitely worth it in terms of the overall FPS scores that you get, which is typically higher than our NVIDIA counterpart that is retailing for around the $200 mark. So the NVIDIA card that I actually picked is the GTX 760, and that's primarily the fact that I actually have a GTX 760, and there's a whole bunch of different variants, and there's a whole bunch of different price points depending on certain sales and things like that. But I think it's a good overall $200 GPU from NVIDIA. That's definitely going to give the Alpha a run for its money. Now, if we add up all the totals based on my specific benchmarking rig, we're getting about $521 with the case and everything. Now, if you go the R9 280X route, it's going to be a little bit more expensive, but you are going to get better performance, so just keep that in mind. But specifically, our build is about $521.93 specifically. Of course, sales change and things like that, but that's the rough kind of estimate of how much much this costs. Now keep in mind that this does not include a Windows 8.1 OS, so if you do want to run that, that's going to be another $93, but you can run Steam OS and get all of your applications and games from there, which is free at this point. Now let's go ahead and finally do some performance benchmarking on the Alpha compared to our custom build PC and see how they perform against each other. Now the first benchmark that we're going to take a look at is Unigen's Valley synthetic benchmark, and we have both machines set to 1080p with high overall details, and the final scores are about 42.6 average frames per second on the Alpha, and we're getting about 68 frames per second on average on our custom PC, and pretty decent overall performance from both, but we can definitely see that our custom PC with the GTX 760 is really doing quite well. Now the first game that we're going to take a look at is pretty graphically intensive. We're looking at Far Cry 4, and we're getting about a score about 33 frames per second on Fraps, and again we have 1080p settings at high overall details, and we have about 45 frames per second on our custom gaming console, which is certainly not bad. Again, if you lower down the detail settings, you can get more playable frame rates on this game. Now looking at Titanfall, this is a much more easier game to play, even with kind of ultra settings. We have great overall performance from both consoles, about 69 frames per second on our GTX 760 and about 51 frames per second on the Alpha, which is using the 860M GPU. Now Battlefield 4 is a little bit more intensive, but we're doing a great job on our GTX 760, getting a great score about 59 frames per second on high overall details at 1080p versus 38 frames per second on the Alpha. Call of Duty Advanced Warfare is about 45 frames per second on the Alpha and about 68 frames per second with high details at 1080p, and this game is definitely really easily playable at medium settings if you set down to the Alpha, versus you can probably get away with ultra settings on our custom built PC. Now Civilization Beyond Earth is getting about 42 frames per second and about 57 frames per second on our custom built PC. Again, high details at 1080p. Now looking at Dragon Age Inquisition, this is a pretty tough game to kind of render out in high details at 1080p. We're getting about 29 frames per second on the Alpha and about 38 frames per second on our custom built PC. So it's definitely playable in my opinion on the custom built PC if you lower down the detail settings, versus if you are gonna play at 1080p, it's pretty tough to play this title on the Alpha. Now the last game that we're gonna take a look at is The Crew, and we're getting about 45 frames per second on our Alpha and about 57 frames per second on our custom build PC. So definitely hitting that 60 frames per second mark on our custom build PC, and I'm sure you could hit that kind of vicinity if you lower down the detail settings on the Alpha. But other than that, guys, that's really it. If you have any specific questions about anything I talked about in this video, please make sure to leave that on a comment down below. Make sure to give us a thumbs up if you like this video. That helps us out tremendously. And one last point is that if you do build your own custom PC, there's a lot of benefits of basically configuring the parts specific to what your needs are, so you can spend more or less depending on what you actually need to do. So that's the beauty of it. Now, the Alienware Alpha, in terms of the overall compact size and just the convenient factor of just buying it and straight out of the box, it's a console that can play most of the titles at fairly decent playable resolution. So now, even though in terms of 1080p performance it kind of struggles on especially the modern titles, I think it still offers a lot for your money when you consider how compact it is and the fact that it is an all-in-one complete system. So definitely love to hear your thoughts. Thanks so much for watching again, and we'll see you later. Take care.